So tell me a little bit about your nonprofit that you started called the First Responder Project. Something that's real near and dear to my heart, but really focused on supporting the mental health of our first response community. And I really do love your tagline, because everybody needs backup.
Yeah, we thought we would. It kind of just fell out of my mouth one day, and I thought, well, that's probably a pretty accurate statement without sounding too cliche and I don't know, not having enough meaning or depth to it. And it really is. It's true, and it's simple, and it's real, and it's raw, and that's just the way it is. Even as a therapist, I have to recognize when I need to go to therapy, or I need to offload or off gas, or download something to someone else, whether it be professional or personal. And I say that oftentimes to first responders, like, if I can go, there's no worse patient in therapy than a therapist. I feel bad for any therapist who has to do therapy with me, because we can see all the Jedi mind tricks coming in. And we can be just as defensive as anyone else and having to look at ourselves. But FRP was really born out of the recognition of myself and my colleagues that there were myriad resources for veterans, although the asterisk caveat is that many veterans either do not avail themselves of that, or they somehow get lost in that overlapping, redundant system of resources, I think because it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so we have data overload and internet overload. Nevertheless, looking at having been in the trauma field for a long time, I was starting to think about other populations who are exposed to trauma, how they deal with that, how they incorporate that into their professional life and their self-care. And so when I started looking, relatively speaking, and that's not to say that there aren't wonderful organizations and initiatives out there, but relatively speaking, there was a dearth of resources. And I would argue that particularly in some lines of service, in the civilian world, the stigma is worse than it was in the military. So the combination of those two really was the impetus for FRP being born. And we really believe that, as I mentioned before, that you have to reach out, that you have to show up, you have to be authentic. You can't be coin operated. There can be no secondary gain to what you do. For one, because I don't think it's ethical. And two, because they'll see right through it. If you show up and you have an ulterior motive for being there, instead of just wanting to be a good human and connect with other humanity, even in those dark times, that people will respond much more readily. So we provide educational summits, we do trainings, debriefs, whatever is needed. We're really excited this year to start running retreats, which my colleagues and I have a lot of experience running them with veterans and their support people, and found that 3.5 days can be a phenomenal jumping off point and springboard for getting people to think about, well, maybe I do need to reconcile some things, and giving them the language to understand that it's not that trauma sometimes gets overutilized. It's an umbrella term, I think, personally or professionally. And if you talk to first responders and veterans about breaking that down into, some of that is threat-based, and some of that is tragedy exposure, and some of that is transgression, that seems like it goes in one eye and out the other, in one ear and out the other, and you just log it away because there's so many things, that if you really get people to sit and identify what comes out of that what types of things get damaged, like trust and safety and predictability, security, you're giving people tools to be able to talk about it in a way that's not from the medical model through that lens, but instead from an occupational lens that just makes sense. It just is what it is. And when you can lighten that perceived stigma and give people a chance to say, because I do what I do, I need to really look after myself. I need to check on my escapism behaviors and make sure that they're as healthy as they can be, and incorporate my loved ones and bring them up to speed on what's going on. Generally speaking, people who are tip of the spear and get after and get things done want information. So we try to start there and equip them with ways to talk about it in a manner that does not require them to tuck their tail or hang their head and feel awkward about it.